On Rye, Chapter 29. That summer, July 1934, they gunned down John Dillinger outside the movie house in Chicago. He never had a chance. The lady in red had fingered him. More than a year earlier, the banks had collapsed. Prohibition was repealed and my father drank East Side beer again. The weird thing was Dillinger getting it. A lot of people admired Dillinger and it made everybody feel terrible. Roosevelt was president. He gave fireside chats over the radio and everybody listened. He could really talk. He began to enact programs to put people to work, but things were still very bad. My boils got worse. They were unbelievably large. That September, I was scheduled to go to Woodhaven High, but my father insisted to go to Chelsea High. Look, I told him, Chelsea is out of this district. It's too far away. You'll do as I tell you. You'll register at Chelsea High. I knew why he wanted me to go to Chelsea. The rich kids went there. My father was crazy. He still thought about being rich. When Baldy found out I was going to Chelsea, he decided to go there too. I couldn't get rid of him or my boils. First day we rode our bikes to Chelsea and parked them. It was a terrible feeling. Most of those kids, at least all the older ones, had their own automobiles. Many of them new convertibles, and they weren't black or dark blue like most cars. They were bright yellow, green, orange, and red. The guys sat in them outside the school, and the girls gathered around and went for rides. Everybody was nicely dressed. The guys and the girls, they had pullover sweaters, wristwatches, and laced shoes. They seemed very adult, poised, and superior. And there I was, my homemade shirt, my one ragged pair of pants, my run-down shoes, and I was covered in boils. The guys in the cars didn't worry about acne. They were very handsome, they were all tall and clean with bright teeth, and they didn't wash their hair with hand soap. They seemed to know something I didn't know. I was at the bottom again. Since all the guys had cars, Baldy and I were ashamed of our bicycles. We left them home and walked to school and back, 2.5 miles each way. We carried brown bag lunches, but most of the other students didn't even eat in the school cafeteria. They drove to malt shops with the girls, played the jukeboxes, and laughed. They were on their way to USC. I was ashamed of my boils. At Chelsea, I had a choice between gym and ROTC. I took ROTC because then I didn't have to wear a gym suit and nobody could see the boils in my body. But I hated the uniform. The shirt was made of wool and it irritated my boils. The uniform was worn from Monday to Thursday. On Friday, we were allowed to wear regular clothes. We studied the manual of arms. It was about warfare and shit like that. We had to pass exams. We marched around the field. We practiced the manual of arms. Handling the rifle during various drills was bad for me. I had boils in my shoulders. Sometimes when I slammed the rifle against my shoulder, a boil would break and leak through my shirt. The blood would come through, but because the shirt was thick and made of wool, the spot wasn't obvious and didn't look like blood. I told my mother what was happening. She lined the shoulders of my shirts with white patches of cloth, but it only helped a little. Once an officer came through on inspection. He grabbed the rifle in my hands and held it up, peering through the barrel for dust in the bore. He slammed the rifle back at me, then looked at a blood spot on my right shoulder. "Shanaski," he snapped. "Your rifle is leaking oil." "Yes, sir." I got through the term, but the boils got worse and worse. They were as large as walnuts and covered my face. I was very ashamed. Sometimes at home I would stand before the bathroom mirror and break one of the boils. Yellow pus would spurt and splatter on the mirror, and little white hard pits. In a horrible way, it was fascinating that all that stuff was in there, but I knew how hard it was for other people to look at me. The school must have advised my father. At the end of that term, I was withdrawn from school. I went to bed and my parents covered me with ointments. There was a brown salve that stank. My father preferred that one for me. It burned. He insisted that I keep it on longer, much longer than the instructions advised. One night he insisted that I leave it on for hours. I began screaming. I ran to the tub, filled with water, and washed the salve off with difficulty. I was burned on my face, my back, my chest. That night I sat on the edge of the bed. I couldn't lay down. My father came into the room. "I thought I told you to leave that stuff on." "Look what happened," I told him. My mother came into the room. "The son of a bitch doesn't want to get well," my father told her. "Why did I have to have a son like this?" My mother lost her job. My father kept leaving his car every morning as if he were going to work. "I'm an engineer," he told people. He'd always wanted to be an engineer. It was arranged for me to go to the LA County General Hospital. I was given a long white card. I took the white card and got on the number 7 streetcar. The fare was 7 cents, or 4 tokens for a quarter. I dropped my token and walked to the back of the streetcar. I had an 8:30 a.m. appointment. A few blocks later, a young boy and a woman got on the streetcar. The woman was fat and the boy was about 4 years old. They sat in the seat behind me. I looked out the window. We rolled along. I liked that number 7 streetcar. Went really fast and rocked back and forth as the sun shone outside. "Mommy," I heard the young boy say, "what's wrong with that man's face?" The woman didn't answer. The boy asked her the same question. She didn't answer. Then the boy screamed out, "Mommy, what's wrong with that man's face?" "Shut up, I don't know what's wrong with his face." I went to admissions at the hospital and they instructed me to report on the 4th floor. There, the nurse at the desk took my name and told me to be seated. We sat in 2 long rows of green metal chairs facing one another. Mexicans, whites, and blacks. There were no Orientals. There was nothing to read. Some of the patients had day-old newspapers. The people were of all ages, thin, fat, short and tall, old and young. Nobody talked. Everybody seemed very tired. Orderlies walked back and forth. Sometimes you saw a nurse, but never a doctor. An hour went by, 2 hours. Nobody's name was called. I got out to look for a water fountain. I looked in the lower rooms where people were to be examined. There wasn't anybody in any of the rooms, neither doctors nor patients. I went to the desk. The nurse was staring down to a big fat book with names written in it. The phone rang. She answered it. Dr. Menon isn't here yet. She hung up. Pardon me, I said. Yes, the nurse asked. The doctors aren't here yet. Can I come back later? No, but there's nobody here. The doctors are on call. But I have an 8:30 appointment. Everybody here has an 8:30 appointment. There are 45 or 50 people waiting. Since I'm on the waiting list, suppose I come back in a couple hours. Maybe there will be some doctors here then. If you leave now, you'll automatically lose your appointment. You'll have to return tomorrow if you still wish treatment. I walked back and sat in a chair. The others didn't protest. There was very little movement. Sometimes 2 or 3 nurses would walk by laughing. Once they pushed a man past in a wheelchair. Both his legs were heavily bandaged, and his ear on the side of his head toward me had been sliced off. There was a black hole divided into little sections that looked like a spider gone there made a spider web. Hours passed. Noon came and went. Another hour. 2 hours. We sat and waited. Then somebody said, "There's a doctor." The doctor walked in one of the examination rooms and closed the door. We all watched. Nothing. The nurse went in. We heard her laughing. Then she walked out. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. The doctor walked over with a clipboard in his hand. "Martinez?" the doctor asked. "Joseph Martinez?" An old thin Mexican man stood up and began walking toward the doctor. "Martinez? Martinez, old boy, how are you?" "Sick, doctor. I think I die." "Well now, step in here." Martinez was in there a long time. Picked up a discarded newspaper and tried to read it, but we were all thinking about Martinez. If Martinez ever got out of there, someone would be next. Then Martinez screamed. "Ah! Ah! Stop! Stop! Ah! Mercy! God! Please stop!" Now, that doesn't hurt," said the doctor. Martinez screamed again. The nurse ran to the examination room. There was silence. All we could see was a black shadow of the half-open doorway. Then an orderly ran to the examination room. Martinez made a gurgling sound. He was taken out there on a rolling stretcher. The nurse and the orderly pushed him down the hall and through some swinging doors. Martinez was under a sheet, but he wasn't dead because the sheet wasn't pulled over his face. The doctor stayed in the examination room for another 10 minutes. Then he came out with a clipboard. "Jefferson Williams?" he asked. There was no answer. "Is Jefferson Williams here?" There was no response. "Mary Blackthorne?" There was no answer. "Harry Lewis?" "Yes, doctor." "Step forward, please." He was very slow. The doctor saw 5 more patients. Then he left the examination room, stopped at the desk, lit a cigarette, and talked to the nurse for 15 minutes. He looked like a very intelligent man. He had a twitch in the right side of his face, which kept jumping, and he had red hair with streaks of gray. He wore glasses and kept taking them off and putting them back on. Another nurse came in and gave him a cup of coffee. He took a sip, then holding the cup in one hand, he pushed the swinging doors open with the other and was gone. The officers came out from behind the desk with a long white card. She called our names. As we answered, she handed each of us our card back. "The ward is closed for the day. Please return tomorrow if you wish. Your appointment time is stamped on your card." I looked down at my card. It was stamped 8:30 a.m.